Well, right out of the gate, Ford sales in the spring of 1964 were tremendous. Ford also realized in order to keep that momentum going, they needed Carroll Shelby to get involved. He'd done great things with the Cobra and the Ford 289 and that. So what they did is they hired him to get this car homologated for B production. He went to SCCA. SCCA said, well, you can either modify the suspension or you can modify the motor, but not both. You have to have 100 cars built by spring or January of 1965. So when the SCCA inspectors came out to his California plant and saw 110 cars in a row, they were in awe. What had he built? Probably the first production car that actually started life as a race car and then was detuned for the street. The R models, the 36 of these cars that were built, were genuine race cars that could be ordered from any Ford dealer, and that's exactly what happened with this car. Dockery Ford sponsored this car. Joe and Bob Dockery remember this car vividly right from day one.
Martin Crinder drove the car most of the time. The title was in his name, but I just remember that one time when he was sick and that Mark Donahue drove the car.
Archway Ford dropped their sponsorship of Mark, I guess, at the end of '65, and we made a deal with Mark and his mechanic, George Clark, and we brought them to Morristown and gave them a place to work, and George took care of both cars and prepared both of them, so I didn't have to do quite as much work anymore.
They would swap cars to compare notes to see if they could make the two cars faster. So they would occasionally switch cars. And one would say, hey, I know how to get it to handle better through this corner, and they'd chase one another around the track, and you'd go, there goes more money.
The sad part of this whole story is that in August 1967, we were at Watkins Glen.
And we had a lightweight aluminum transmission given to us by the Ford Motor Company. The transmission broke. And very sadly, Marty pulled over to the side of the track.
Now, I don't know if you've ever been to Watkins Glen, but there's one big field when you're coming down the backside before you come around to the start-finish line. And he pulled the car off into that field and parked it. Got out of the car, took his helmet off, and started walking toward the fence where the crowds were.
It started to rain, and an inexperienced driver in his car, which was a Cobra, went by, lost the car, hit Marty, and put him into a tree.
So that basically ended my racing. His wife asked me to sell the car, which we did, and I really lost interest in racing after that incident.
Somewhere there was a antique race car thing at Lime Rock, and I was up there, or my brother went there in late 90s, and I'm sure we ran across the doctor who owned the car and who raced the car, and I know my brother said to me,
you know, if you ever want to get rid of it, call us. And then one day, I picked up my edition of Snakebite, the publication from Shelby American, and here it is for sale.
And my brother called me up and said, you're crazy, you have all the money, you go buy it. Here I am.
And the rest is history. We now own it.
The car was very presentable. Okay, it looked good on the outside. When you started pulling the car back apart, you can tell it had many repairs over the years, as race cars always do.
We invited all the guys who were involved in our racing back in the early '60s, and we kind of talked about what to do, what not to do, and then Joe and I decided that maybe it would be really nice to have this thing back to 100% original.
And since it had already been beaten up and we decided not to beat it up anymore, we came to Legendary.
And to keep it that way, because we know a lot of the cars, the R cars, are being raced. And sooner or later, they're going to get beat up. And this one will, I think we can make these kids, our descendants, keep it this way. And maybe it'll be around for another 50 years.
It's not often you get to restore a car so deep in history like this car. And the fact that the car has been a race car since day one, has been nothing but a race car, it's kind of nice to put it back to the original condition that the car was in. And Joe was adamant about not over restoring this car. He said, I want to see the orange peel in the paint. I want to see the lines and the stripes. I want to feel the edges. He said the interior, same thing. Don't over restore this car. He was adamant about it. Matter of fact, first thing he said when he came in the showroom, he says, Now, as far as values on a car like this, like I said, 36 built, it's going to be somewhere between $350,000 to $400,000. I don't think Joe will ever sell this car, so to him, it's priceless.
It certainly won't be me selling it. Let me put it that way. Never say never. I will never sell it.